After 21 games, the Toronto Raptors sit at 9-12 on the season, well behind the pace they would have liked to have set to go out and win games this season. But what is the real reason behind their struggles this season? I'm going to give the answer to you in today's video, and it may not be the one you're expecting. Let's get into it. This is Amateur Sports, the YouTube channel that is completely dedicated to providing you with Toronto Raptors analysis and news coverage in videos just like this, as well as live stream watch parties for every Raptors game. If you like what you see from today's video, make sure you have hit that like button and support the channel. Get us to 150 likes on today's video and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more Raptors coverage just like this. We're getting very close to that milestone of 16,000 subs. But 21 games into the season, we are over a quarter of the way through this NBA season. It's a pretty good sample size to give you evidence as to exactly what you can expect a team to be over the course of the year. And certainly there are a ton of games to make some changes. Certainly there are a ton of games to set things straight. But for the Raptors, there really hasn't been any sort of upward trajectory compared to what we saw earlier in the season. The Raptors have relatively remained the same in their output. And honestly, with the way that they're playing, we're starting to get a little bit more accustomed to the struggles. It's not surprising to see the struggles. The stuff that's surprising is when things are starting to go really well. Things are starting to be more consistent on the court, but that has not been the case this season. And 9-12 for a team that wants to make the playoffs, a team that bought at the previous trade deadline to be a winning team, be a playoff team, the team that invested in the offseason to try and continue to be a winning team. That is not an ideal situation to be in. On pace pretty much for not even a play-in spot this season. That would ultimately be a disaster considering the Raptors don't even have their 2024 first-round pick to rely on realistically, as that top 6 protected pick was sent out to the Spurs at that 2023 trade deadline that I referenced. But what is going wrong with this team? What is going so wrong that they can't find ways to win these competitive games, that they so often fall to double-digit disadvantages early on in games in the first quarter, or even by halftime? The amount of games they've been down by 10 or more points, 15 or more points, 18 or more points, 20 or more points this season is astounding. They've had to come back in some games, and though they have done so successfully, it is just not something that you can rely on. You need consistency to win consistently in this league. The Raptors have not had that this season. And many of the fans are starting to point the fingers at a certain figure. That figure is the head coach, Darko Rajakovic. Darko is a rookie head coach at 44 years old, and many are starting to question the hiring of this individual to lead this team through this perhaps pretty difficult era here. Masai Ujiri made it pretty clear in the offseason that they want to continue to be a competitive team. He did so with his words, and he has done so with his actions over the last couple of years. So this team has been set out there to win games. This team has been put on the court to win as many games as possible. And though Darko, as well as every other piece of the coaching staff who has been hired with more of a developmental mind in place, though that is the case for these guys, they still have a job to do, and that job is to win games. They are trying to put players on the floor to win games. Sure, is some of that winning mentality coming at the slight expense of wanting to play the younger guys, wanting to get younger guys more involved, wanting to develop certain pieces? Sure, I can say that maybe there is a bit of a drop back in some cases there, but this team is focused on winning. I guarantee you that the head coach and the coaching staff are not as worried about development right now as they are about winning basketball games. But they've just not done enough this season. 9 wins out of 21 this season is just not enough for a competing team. And there's been some question marks over the preparation going into the games, how the Raptors start slow in so many games when the game plan was a little bit more obvious. We can praise Darko Rajakovic a little bit for his halftime adjustments that he's made at times, but those adjustments were obvious some of the times. Those adjustments were things that he should have done going into the game, not during the game, not on the fly. And people are also starting to criticize the new point guard that's coming to the team, Dennis Schroder, and that also falls back a little bit on Darko Rajakovic. Dennis Schroder, in a recent game against the Miami Heat, had the most field goal attempts on the box score for the Raptors, and he shot 4 of 18. That is a lot of field goal attempts for Dennis Schroder, who realistically is, you could probably say Dennis Schroder is the 5th best player on this team. You'd say Siakam is number 1, Barnes is number 2, OG is number 3. I think that you can definitively make the case that Jakob Poeltl is the 4th best player, maybe not so offensively, but at the end of the day, Jakob Poeltl just signed a $20 million a year contract over 4 years. Dennis Schroder got $12.5 million over 2 years. So talent-wise, I think I know who I'd side with there. Dennis Schroder is a fine player, yes, but the amount of shots that he's taking is starting to concern some Raptors fans, and it's starting to concern me as well. But all in all, Darko Rajakovic allowing maybe Dennis Schroder to take these shots, Dennis Schroder with some of this shot selection. What is the real problem with this team? Is it these two that are causing these issues for the 9-12 start to the season? Well, unfortunately, the answer is not quite as simple. The 9-12 season so far needs to be mostly attributed to the front office once again. Sure, some decisions here or there, some performances here or there have cost the Raptors a win or two, but overall on the season, like, are you really that surprised with the way the season is going so far? Like, is it really that shocking the Raptors started 9-12? If you were in tune with this team, you were following this team, you were actually really critically thinking about this roster, you saw the flaws going to the season. There was not enough floor spacing. Like, for an NBA roster to thrive, really, a starting five to thrive, you can have, like, max 2 non-shooters in the starting five. The Raptors, you could argue, have 4. Jakob Poeltl can't shoot. Dennis Schroder is a non-shooter. And don't believe me, Miami left him open all the time. That's why he took 18 field goal attempts. Miami were content to leave him open. Siakam is not a shooter. Scotty Barnes, he's starting to develop a shot. Consistency is going to come. Maybe it's starting to come for the player, sure, but we'll call him like half shooter at this point. OG Anunoby is a shooter, a very good three-point shooter. However, not enough off of movement, not enough off the dribble, but still, he's a shooter. So maybe if you're being nice, the Raptors have 1.5 shooters in the starting five. As I said, you should probably have 3. You should probably have 4 even shooters in your starting five. The Raptors have 1, maybe 1.5. So there's an immediate flaw. You could say maybe some shooting is coming off the bench. Well, it's not. The Raptors kind of gambled on some lesser valued players like Jalen McDaniels to come into the team and make a difference from shooting. He has not been able to shoot the ball this season. Malachi Flynn is shooting efficiently percentage-wise, but on a low volume of attempts. Otto Porter Jr. barely gets playtime. Boucher is inconsistent. Precious Achiuwa, inconsistent is the word I'm going to politely use and move on from him. And Gary Trent Jr., who's supposed to be a big-time threat from the outside this season, has had no consistency whatsoever this season. But we knew there was just a definitive lack of spacing overall on this team. And Miami in the recent game, without Bam Adebayo, were able to just sit in the paint. They had a small lineup out there, but were able to just sit back in the paint. And even though the Raptors shot like 37% from 3 it was so inconsistent that we had like 3 or 4 different stretches of that game where 5 minutes would go by with no offense whatsoever for this team. The start of the game, the start of the third quarter, and the start of the fourth quarter. No offense to be found by the Raptors because Miami are saying, if you're not going to hit threes, we are not going to give you any space on the inside. They dared us to shoot all game, and even though we were moderately efficient, they kept daring us. We weren't efficient enough to make up for the fact that they clogged the paint and took away opportunities on the inside, which made it so difficult for the Raptors to succeed in this game. Darko's a rookie head coach, gonna give him time. Like, some decisions have not been quite there, but it's tough to really criticize Darko critically when it's so clear that this roster and its current construction just absolutely makes no sense. Dennis Schroder, it's tough to criticize him because after all, he's a $12.5 million point guard who's been producing some excellent playmaking numbers this season. Has shot the ball. Yeah, the shot selection has been a little bit suspect. Some of the shots that he's taking, some of them, I mean, he's open a lot because teams are leaving him open in these recent games, but it's hard to really fault this player. He's a $12.5 million player being asked to shoot a lot more than he normally should be shooting. He should be more of the floor general type of person for floor spaces around him. He just doesn't have that with this team. It'd be ideal to have Dennis Schroder on like an ideal roster as your sixth man to run a second unit. If he's going to be the point guard, you want to have some really good players around him, and the Raptors don't have a really good roster in the area for Dennis Schroder to really succeed. And even despite all that, he's still producing some good playmaking numbers. We're asking him to play a game that probably he should not be playing. The level of his caliber, abilities, and all that, this is probably not a role that he should be playing. So it's hard to fault Darko. I really don't think we should be going after Dennis Schroder like this. Your focus completely should be on the front office. Yes, Darko, some decisions have led to perhaps 1 or 2 extra losses, but perhaps some decisions have led to 1 or 2 extra wins for this team. Has it been as consistent I'd like it to be from him? No, but again, it's really tough to fault him when it's so painstakingly obvious what is wrong with the roster. And in the modern NBA here, you really want to be a contender, you want to be tanking, or you want to be a team on the rise. So yeah, really good, really bad, so you have a draft pick. But if you're neither of these two things, like look at OKC last year, look at the Indiana Pacers last year. No, they weren't good teams. No, they were not contenders, but there was trajectory. There was an upward trajectory that you could trust those teams had. That this season, when they keep on improving, they start to put things together, fine-tune a little bit, they can take a real big step. That's what the Pacers were able to do last season compared to this season. That's what OKC were able to do last season compared to this season. And that is what Orlando maybe even are doing this season. But the difference is with these teams, they took that step back seasons prior to prepare themselves with the youth and with the talent to take those big steps in the future. The Raptors have no foundation, no building block to go off of at this point. So it really makes no sense to keep on putting this team out there that's middle of the pack in everything, middle of the pack, even maybe even lower than that in the NBA. So with nothing to rely on for the future, no ability to contend this season, my goodness, start to commit to a youthful team. Start to commit to a team that makes more sense. Like Masai Ujiri, we'll end on this. Masai Ujiri in the offseason was so adamant that the team last year was selfish, and he did not enjoy watching the Raptors last season. Are you enjoying watching the Raptors this season? Because in most of the games, even some of the wins, I'm not. This product is broken, but they keep on shoveling it out there. So if he didn't like watching the team last season, my goodness, what does he think about the team this season? What do you think about the team this season? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Give me your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, because that's all for me for today. Smash that like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more content here from Amateur Sports, and I'll see you again very soon for another video.